Hi, this is Pamela Koefoed. You are on Faith Cafe Productions, and it's my joy for you to be here with me. I'm talking to you today from the studio here in my home in rural Oregon. I was in my 20s when I had a very real and powerful experience that totally shifted me. I had only a flicker of faith before this experience that I had. I didn't go to church. I didn't read my Bible. I had no interest in church or the Bible. I found them both to be really boring, okay? Well, that experience that I had was so real that it changed all of that, and I became a very on fire believer, follower of Christ. My Aunt Cindy is my mother's sister. My mother only has or had one surviving sibling, and that was my Aunt Cindy, who has passed away in the last probably about 25 years ago. Well, my Aunt Cindy loved me, and I loved her so much. We had a ton of fun together. She was the fun aunt. Sometimes when my sister and I were at the bar with our mother, we were just little kids then, Aunt Cindy, hearing that we were at the bar, would pop in, would just so happen to be in the neighborhood, and she would come in and she would rescue Robin and me and take us to go do things that we thought were really, really fun. She'd take us for ice cream or Taco Bell or to this shop, and I was trying to remember the name of it today, but she would take us to this little shop where there were it was in the 70s, so there were all kinds of hippie things in that shop. There were incense and tie-dye, and there were beads that hung in strands from the ceiling that somebody could put in their doorway. It was so much fun. It was like a curiosity shop, and we would just kind of poke around and do a little shopping without actually buying anything, just having fun, just looking at the cool things. We'd also go to her apartment and hang out and just spend a couple hours with her. She did this just to get us away from that environment, in the bar. It was no fun to be at the bar. So I just loved my Aunt Cindy so very, very much. Well, when I became super on fire for the Lord, my convictions were all of a sudden in conflict with something that my aunt had involved herself in. And I responded, or I did exactly what some of you have probably done in your own experiences, not necessarily just with becoming a Christian, but this can actually apply to a whole range of things that you feel very passionate about your related to your personal uh, convictions. Okay, so my convictions were suddenly in conflict with something that my aunt had involved herself in, and I responded in a way that so many of you have probably responded. My strong conviction was at ends with her convictions and her beliefs. My convictions were at one end of the spectrum. Hers were at the total other opposite end of the spectrum. And I responded by distancing myself from her because I no longer felt safe. I no longer trusted her. I was even a little bit upset and disappointed in her. And because of these things, I no longer sought her out. And of course, now I regret that. Back then, when I was in my early 20s, I didn't know better, okay? So I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do. Well, my aunt, she didn't change. I was the one who changed. In my passion for my convictions, I no longer thought of her in the same way that I used to think of her. I was the one who was wrong. She was still my aunt, the aunt who came to my sister and me in the bar, all those years ago when we were kids to rescue us and to take us to get out of that environment. She was still the aunt who'd take us to ice cream or Taco Bell or, yeah, the store. I just remembered it. It was Pure One Imports in the 70s. It was so cool. She was still the aunt who would, take us to do really fun things. She would bake cakes with us and then let us lick the beaters. She was so much fun. She was that person. She was my absolutely favorite person. I loved her and I had a lot of respect for her. She was the first person who I wanted to come to my home when Vern and I were newly married, and it was our first Thanksgiving. Well, after all, she was the person who had introduced us. She was my friend. Well, I of course today I regret backing away from her, but I did so because of the reasons that I stated just a minute or two ago, that all of a sudden my convictions were at one end of a spectrum and hers were at a totally other end. And she didn't mind that at all. I minded it. And so I slowly distanced myself without even realizing I was doing that. I backed away from the relationship. I no longer sought her out. And that's exactly what many people do in a similar situation when their convictions are at opposite ends with the convictions of somebody that they care about or love. I heard a talk about this passionate convictions and how it affects us, by a psychologist, and her name is Linda uh, Statica. I think it's Statica, Statica, and she's from the University of Illinois in Chicago. I heard her talk on this subject, and she calls these kinds of passionate convictions moral convictions. Doesn't matter if you are a godly person, you're following God, or you're somebody who doesn't follow God. They are still in this category called moral convictions. And Dr. Statica said that moral convictions make it difficult, to make compromise, and it makes it difficult for us to hear any other ideas or opinions or perspectives. She said, this question, she said, can our moral convictions actually prevent us from achieving them? And that gave me pause. And that's what birthed this message that I'm sharing with you today. And again, the question is, can our moral convictions actually prevent us from achieving them? Now, here's what happens when you have passionate convictions. Now, I'm talking about your personal, strong conviction related to an issue, a cause, a person, or a group of people. Let's take Black Lives Matters, for instance. You possibly have personal convictions, and if you're passionately you have compassionate convictions, really strong moral convictions concerning BLM, then if somebody says something that contradicts what you believe, then you're going to have an internal reaction, possibly. That reaction will then become one on the outside. It depends on if you self-regulate or you just, pop off at the mouth, or however you respond. But BLM is one of those issues that is a moral conviction for many people, as is, let's think about some of them off the top of my head. How about the border issue? How about the issue of immigration, the issue of gay rights, the issue of what else? Racial justice. What about fairness and equality? These are all hot issues right now in the United States, and many people have deep, passionate, personal convictions about them. Well, here's what happens when you have passionate convictions. You feel that you are right. It's an actual, legitimate, physical something that you experience. It's a legitimate feeling. You feel that you are right. When you think about or hear about this issue, person, or a people group that you feel strongly about, there's a physiological response. Your body triggers ephedrine or cortisol, which in both are very powerful stimulants, all right? And one will send energy to you to stimulate you to action, and the other will send energy to you to stimulate motivation. So cortisol is a chemical that stimulates motivation. Ephedrine stimulates action. When the two come together, you have a powerful combination for motivation, all right? So when you feel or experience something that you passionately care about, most likely what you are actually feeling is that cortisol or ephedrine. Okay, it's just rushing through your system, and now all of a sudden you want to act or respond or do something to maybe to help or to intervene in a situation. We see that happening all the time on social media, don't we? You see the word stones being thrown back and forth between people who feel very passionate about causes, issues, people, or groups that they care about. They are reacting to or responding out of that release of cortisol, ephedrine, or the combination of the two. So what you are feeling is a legitimate feeling, but I want you to question your information. You see, in order for us to truly be able to be a part of the solution, we need to know how to respond in a way that is an effective way to accomplish our goals or the goals of the people that we are caring about, right? So we don't want to just fly off with any kind of response when we're having this massive energy surge of motivation running through us and we're just feeling like, yeah, I've got to do something about this now, okay? I'm going to give you another personal example of this in a second, something that I experienced recently along these lines. So what happens is you've got that physiological response going on and your feeling is very, very strong. And because you are feeling it, then you feel that you are absolutely right. And likely those then who have opposing views, you are certain, now remember, certain, you feel absolutely right. And those who oppose or are at the opposite end of what you feel, those people then you feel are certainly wrong. And that can include experts, researchers, investigative reporters, people in the medical field, medical professionals, researchers, scientists, leaders in any industry, clergy or your elders, people who you, like me, people who you have connections with, whom you're bonded with, whom you trust. If they are at the opposite end of the spectrum of what you're passionate about, your level of trust is very likely going to be reduced based upon what you're feeling. You feel you're right, you feel they're wrong. And then our reaction, the normal response then is we back away, because when these are topics or these are issues that we're passionate about, and many times they're life or death issues, such as the abortion issue, such as child trafficking and human suffering around the world hunger. These are life and death issues, and we feel passionately about certain ones. And what we're feeling passionate about is that those people in those groups that we care about, their lives are in danger or their lives are reduced in some way, and we passionately feel that the injustices that are happening to them should be stopped, or that something should be done to better their situation. And when somebody is at the opposite spectrum from us, then inside, intuitively, we feel that that person is so wrong that we can no longer trust them. It's almost like now we're in this moral challenge, right? Because we have this moral conviction, a strong moral conviction. We're right, they're wrong. And now our relationship to those people is beginning to change on our side, not theirs. It's a genuine physiological response that you feel that motivates you to action, and you're feeling like you've got to do something. You want to intervene, you want to help, and you feel so keenly that you are right. Therefore, you are closed to the perspective or information that those at the other side have that they're wanting to share with you, or that's just available to you. You have all the truth after all. And everyone who is at the opposite end of the issue isn't perceiving truth. They are, according to the way that you feel, they are wrong or deceived or misled or misinformed, or they're deplorable, or they are evil, or they are wicked, or they are totally untrustworthy. Your passionate convictions make it extremely difficult for you to be objective. In fact, you will subject everything within the context of what you are feeling or what your perspective is. You'll subject it to how you feel. You'll subject what you feel. You'll subject what you feel to what you feel, if that makes any sense. You will subject anything you hear about your topic, whether it's in supportive or whether it's on a different angle, or whether it's at the totally opposite spectrum. You will subject it to your feeling of being right. Now, when someone wanting to know more does their research, and I have a feeling that a lot of you are researchers, you like to delve in and uncover truth. Well, when you do your research in this area of what you're passionate about, your passionate conviction, your moral conviction, you will very likely find those who share your same concerns and passions. And so then your convictions are strengthened, not challenged. Well, I just want to say this. I think there's a better way, because, I remember what Dr. Linda, the psychologist, said on this topic, and she was saying that when we feel, and it's a real physiological experience, when we feel that we are so right, we can actually stand in the way of progress, because we're not open to solutions that someone else with a different perspective could provide, or we're not open to the possibility that the information that we have isn't completely legitimate. And so there is a better way. Now, I had this experience. I'm going to close with this, okay? So this isn't a long broadcast today. I'm going to close with this experience that I had. Not too long ago, I saw a video of this young man, and his mom had gotten her phone out, and she began live recording. And in the video, what I saw that there was a policewoman standing in front of the young man, not too many feet away from him, with her hand on her gun. And I could hear the mom almost yelling. She was so scared. She was almost yelling at the policewoman. And she was saying to her, just give him a ticket. You see, he ran a red light. No, I'm sorry. He ran a stop sign. And that was fact. And the young man didn't deny it, and the mom didn't deny it. That's exactly what he had done. But the policewoman just stood there with her hand on her gun and would say things to the mom like, you're escalating this. The police officer was feeling threatened. And you could just hear this going back and forth. And it did look like it could become a really scary situation, especially when another police car pulled up. And then all of a sudden you had 3 police cars pull up just for this traffic violation, is what it looked like. And so my moral convictions, my goodness, I'm passionate about human rights. And I could feel what that, at least I thought I could feel what that mom was feeling. And I could imagine what she was going through, because I have sons also, and I have a beautiful daughter. So I was putting myself in her shoes in one way, okay? I couldn't fully identify with her, but I was identifying as a mom with grown children. And I was my heart was going out while I was experiencing the cortisol ephedrine effect. And I was experiencing that incredible energy surge of motivation, and I wanted to respond. I wanted to write something in response to what I was seeing because it just looked so awful. Well, I was also curious, and I've learned to be curious, and I've learned to be open to other perspectives. And I understand that oftentimes the truth that I think I have can turn out to be half truth. It can end up not having the full story. And so I saw a second video. I found the video that was with a policewoman. She had her camera going the whole time. I saw when the young man flew through the stop sign, and then I saw that the policewoman had a number of times given this young man instructions that he totally ignored, and they were simple. He parked on the wrong side of the road, for instance. She told him very politely to pull over to the other side of the road, explaining, "You're not supposed to park on the wrong side of the road. Please pull across the street and park." She told him not to leave his car, to stay in his car. She was going to go walk up to him and give him a ticket. He got out of his car. Can you believe that? This young man got out of his car. Well, none of that was on the mother's phone. Then the mom gets out her phone, and a little while after all of what I just explained took place, just within a minute or two, that's when she began recording. And so all I and thousands of viewers around the world could see is this escalating situation where it looked like that young man might become a victim of police violence. That's what I'm talking about. The whole thing. So I have learned that when I'm curious, when I'm open, when I realize that I don't have the whole truth, I am capable of making mistakes. I'm capable of having an opinion that is not completely correct. Realizing that, then I am open to other perspectives and I'm open to truth. I want to encourage you to do the same. If you really want to be part of the solution, if you really want to help in issues that you're passionate about, then be curious and be a learner and be part of the solution. Be open to other ideas. Don't be closed to other ideas. And ask this question: is there something wrong with your perspective? Because here's what happens. Remember that physiological action that I told you about, that release of cortisol and that release of ephedrine, that produces a feeling, and that feeling is like, you are so right. You are convinced that you're right. You feel it deeply. You feel it. You know that you are right. And so if you're closed, then instead of asking if there could be something wrong with the institution or something wrong with the information you have, you will wonder what's wrong with those who don't see things the same way you do. So be part of the solution. Ask questions, be curious, be a learner, and keep your heart open to people who are at opposite ends. Don't do like I did with Aunt Cindy. Don't do that with the people you love. Value your family and your friends. Value your relationships more than you value these issues, okay? Or value them enough that you never degrade your relationship with them. They're not the enemy, okay? Those who love you are not the enemy. They are truly not against you. I'm certain of that. Hallelujah. Now, from a scriptural perspective, there are a lot of places we could go in the scripture, but all we need to do is look at Jesus Christ. He was so totally on board with this. He definitely had deep, personal, passionate convictions, and yet he never allowed those convictions to alienate himself from the people around him. He didn't allow those issues of his day to get in the way between him and people matter, all right? And I'm just going to close with that. And if you have any comments, I would love to know. If you have a perspective that you want to share, Hey, I am so open to hearing your perspective and to hearing from you. Remember that you are dearly, dearly loved. God bless you and have an amazing day. Bye bye.